Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. More specifically, a brand new Albums I Missed video. Today we'll be talking about a slew of albums that came out in the month of July 2022 that unfortunately I did not have the chance to review, which is a shame because holy shit, a lot of what I listened to in the month of July 2022 was fucking awesome. Like, for real, folks, easily the best month of the year so far for new music. Great records back-to-back from Municipal Waste, Imperial Triumphant, Oceans of Slumber, Ithaca, Wormrot, so many more. So, like, yeah, I'm actually kind of pumped to do this Albums I Missed video, because there's so much more music to talk about, and a lot of it is really fucking good. So, without further ado, let's just get the fuck into it, I guess. Oh, my apologies, actually. Before we do Albums I Missed, how about a little round of applause, a little celebratory hurrah for our good buddy Chompy, who, as of today, is 1 year old. Isn't that crazy, Chompy? It's your fucking birthday! Happy birthday, you soft reptilian fuckface. It's true, ladies and gentlemen. 1 year ago today, Chompy made his debut on the Metal Meltdown during our live entire vinyl collection live stream. So, happy birthday, Chompy. If you don't say happy birthday in the comments, consider yourselves fucking banned forever. That's how important this is. Alright, with that out of the way, Albums I Missed. For realsies this time. Let's fucking go. First up, we have Mortem Soils, the 11th studio album from Brazilian death and thrash metal crew Krisiun. And it sounds exactly like every other Krisiun record, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's aggressive, it's fast, it's punchy, in your face, lots of pummeling riffs and grooves and in-your-face vocals, everything you kind of want from a record like this. For those of you unfamiliar with this band, imagine like Beneath the Remains era Sepultura with like a little bit more death metal brutality, and you're kind of in the right ballpark. I had initially planned to review this album, but when the time came, I found that I didn't really have much to say about Mortem Soils, other than it's Brazilian death and thrash done well. Like, that's it. It's Krisiun doing what Krisiun do best. If all that sounds good to you, great. Enjoy this record. Have fun. Have a fucking blast. If it doesn't, then don't, I guess. Maybe something else in this video will tickle your fancy, and that's A-okay. Next up, we have Mythos, a brand new EP from Floridian death metal icons Massacre. Kind of fascinating that this was released really just about a week, 2 weeks before Inhuman Condition's latest studio album. You know what else is fascinating? This is better. Honestly. I mean, it's not amazing. It's still, like, very generic, very straightforward, very formulaic, cookie-cutter, old-school death metal. But there's, like, way more enthusiasm. The riffs are stronger. I think Massacre actually sounds pretty confident and lively on this thing. And because it's an EP, it's also shorter, so it's kind of easier to digest. You don't have as much filler. You don't have as many weak riffs. Like, Inhuman Condition was longer, and, like, the few songs that were really great kind of bled in with everything else that wasn't so great. Mythos, on the other hand, is tight, and it doesn't waste any fucking time, and it fucks off before it even has the opportunity to waste any fucking time. I mean, the award for, like, best old-school death metal album of the year, without question, still belongs to Undeath and It's Time to Rise from the Grave, but honestly, this is, you know, solid second or third place. It's a pretty good EP. Check it out. Next up, we have Saurian Apocalypse, a brand new solo album from Karl Sanders of Nihil fame, and plot twist, it's not really at all a metal album. I mean, it's dark and heavy atmospherically and conceptually. In fact, it's the third entry in what appears to be a pretty massive series from Karl Sanders as a solo artist. No connection to Nile whatsoever, as far as I can tell. But yeah, it's not metal. It's mostly atmospheric and Middle Eastern and African music with like a lot of acoustic guitars and chanted vocals and very tribal percussion, string arrangements, and orchestral passages. It's lush and evocative and cinematic and very sinister and eerie and creepy in some parts. I can't really comment on where this fits in this Saurian series, I guess, because I'm not familiar with the other entries, but I can tell you as a standalone record, I enjoyed it. It made for a nice palate cleanser after a ton of like crazy over-the-top prog and sludge and avant-garde metal and grindcore, and yeah, I dug it. I guess think of it as Nile, but without the death metal riffery, you know, like all the great musicianship and instrumental passages, but it's not metal. Think of it in that way, approach it that way, and you might find yourself really enjoying it. Yeah, there you go. Next up, we have the Sons of Perdition, Chapter 3, The Astral Drain, a brand new studio album from Canadian black metal crew Panzerfaust. In fact, they're from my hometown of Mississauga, Ontario. I've been following them closely over the years. I've been following this particular chapter of their career pretty closely as well. I was a big fan of the previous two entries in this Sons of Perdition series, which is why I'm slightly disappointed in this record. I mean, it's still pretty good. It's very well made. It's very brutal emotionally, musically, atmospherically, conceptually. I love how Panzerfaust is still kind of exploring war and the consequences of war through black metal. I still think that's really cool. But this record isn't nearly as tight as the previous two. It's not as provocative as the previous two. It's not as challenging or as immersive, and ultimately not as substantial or fulfilling, in my opinion. A lot of the songs are really, really long and slightly monotonous. Like they're very like slow burning, tedious songs, and like there's also 3 interludes that don't really add much to the record whatsoever. They just kind of take up space and time. Still, though, if you're looking for some really chilling, bloodthirsty, kind of atmospheric, creepy black metal, I don't really think you'd be too disappointed with this. In context of this Sons of Perdition series, it is the weakest album, and a bit of a disappointment overall in comparison to the previous 2 chapters, but overall, like as an individual record, not that bad. Like, had I gone ahead and reviewed this and I thought about it, we're looking at maybe a 3 out of 5, like a good solid one at that. Next up, we have Oblivion, a brand new EP from New York black metal crew Tombs, and it's fine. It kind of feels like something the band is just kind of crapping out so they can clear the slate and get rid of some material, perhaps in preparation for a new studio album. I don't know. Whatever the case, there's not a ton of effort that's been put into this EP. There's a remix of an older Tomb song, there's a Motorhead cover, a G.G. Allin cover, 2 original songs which are pretty good, but not to the point where I feel like you need to go out of your way to listen to this unless you're like a die-hard Tombs fan. Ultimately, this just feels kind of half-assed, like something they just kind of crapped out in an afternoon. Like, I don't know, when Christmas comes around, maybe you can use this as a stocking stuffer for your metalhead buddies and shit, but like, yeah, that's about it. Probably the least interesting thing I'm talking about in this Albums I Missed video, if we're being honest. So, yeah. Moving on to something else, to something more exciting. Please and thank you. Next up, we have Windows of Your Heart, a brand new studio album from Haunt, better known as the hardest working heavy metal band on the fucking planet right now. I mean, my fucking god. This band, their work ethic is fucking insane. They release multiple albums every fucking year, and amazingly, all of them are really fucking good, and Windows of Your Heart is no exception. Just like every single Haunt album that came before it, Windows of Your Heart is an epic and thunderous and flashy display of classic heavy metal. It's super nostalgic, super fun, super straight to the goddamn fucking point, well seasoned, well cooked, well served, well everything. Like, honestly, this is way better than what a lot of older hard rock and heavy metal bands are putting out right now. Like, I'll listen to this 20 times over before I listen to that new Saxon record that came out earlier this year, which was fine, don't get me wrong. It wasn't, like, horrible, but this is way better. This is so fucking good. What more can I say? It's another great record from Haunt. Like, it was really funny when, like, this came out and a bunch of people asked me, are you going to review this? And I'm like, why? It's another Haunt record. You already know that it's great. You don't need me to tell you that it's great. Just go listen to it. And yeah, here I am saying it again, I guess. Just go listen to it. It's Haunt. It's great. Duh. Next up, we have All Is Not Well, a brand new studio album from the Machinist, the Machinist. It's got to be one of those two. It's okay. It's very, like, modern, edgy, brutal kind of deathcore and metalcore with some new metal, alt metal vibes and influences. It's well produced. It's enthusiastic. It's performed with a lot of gusto and muscle, but it's not really my thing. I will say I do like a lot of the lyrics. I like how urgent this feels. I like how provocative and poignant a lot of this material is. Tracks like Pig, Mother Earth, All Is Not Well, The Final Encounter, like, we're kind of dealing with a lot of societal issues and, like, the end of the world, and, like, there is some introspective stuff, but, like, it feels, you know, relevant to what's, you know, the rest of what's being discussed on the record. I like that. The production is great. Like, this is a really ballsy mix with a lot of dirty fucking riffs. It's very in your face. But yeah, a lot of the hooks aren't really doing much for me. A lot of, like, the new metal vocals and grooves not really doing much for me. A lot of breakdowns that aren't really doing a lot for me. Yeah, it's a noble effort, but just not my thing. Next up, we have Onslaught to Seraphim, the third studio album from Triumvir Foul. And this thing rules. This is some really gnarly, really ghoulish and grisly and scary and evil kind of underground death metal. It almost has this kind of, like, black metal intensity to it. Like, it's just that absurdly dark and chaotic and evil record. Like, I really love the vibe and the atmosphere of this thing. Like, this sounds like creatures from heaven and hell just absolutely tearing each other to shreds, which, appropriately and not so coincidentally, is what the album is kind of about. Writing here, Onslaught of Seraphim tells the demise of the beasts and the wage war upon the heavens and the slaughtering of angels in their carnal demise. So, yeah, see? Like, yeah, pretty gruesome shit. Just a fucking great underground death metal record, plain and simple. If you want to get the absolute fucking snot beat out of you, may I recommend allowing this particular record to deliver the beating. Next up, we have God's Country from Chatpile, and this is, interesting. It's very, like, miserable, misanthropic, obtuse, and crazed kind of noise rock, sludge metal with, like, a little bit of a punky kind of underbite to it. It's a very bitter and bleak and hopeless record dealing with everything from capitalism to climate change and global warming, the consequences of COVID-19, and the past 2 years of living within a global pandemic. The band sounds tired, they sound absolutely fucking exhausted, honestly, and they sound pissed off, and they sound upset. This is music for people who have straight up given up on the world, and are doing their best to make it a better place, but they feel deep down that their efforts are pointless, and that they will be fruitless, so now they just make really miserable noise rock and sludge metal. That's who Chatpile is making music for. If that describes you perfectly, I think you'll really enjoy this. Me personally, I think I just want something that has, you know, more melody and riffs and such, but I appreciate Chatpile making this record. It's definitely the record they wanted to make. And I will say this is probably one of the more interesting and memorable pieces of sludge I've heard this year, aside from the Conjurer record. Like, this thing is, you know, inarguably a pretty fascinating and harrowing record. And I think for that reason alone, I will be returning to this often enough. Next up, we have Hostile Architecture from Ashenspire. And I have to give a shout out to Wheels of Mercury, because I was not aware of this record until he made me aware of this record. So thank you, Wheels of Mercury. Thank you very much. This right here is some really kind of unorthodox and challenging kind of avant-garde and progressive black metal. There are spoken word arrangements, a lot of very angular, dissonant rhythms and passages, and weird time signatures, and weird vocal patterns and riffs. It's all over the place, it's unpredictable, very chaotic, very weird, and I fucking love it. I fucking love this record. It's very politically charged, and it's urgent, and it's bitter, a lot like the Chat Pile record, but whereas that sometimes felt like it was meandering and just going through these like really hopeless sprawls of sludge, this thing just bursts with energized, calculated, and really in-your-face, abrasive displays of super experimental, almost kind of post-punk-ish black metal. Like, it's just so fucking cool. If Imperial Triumphant traded all the jazz influence for, like, mathcore and post-punk, this is what they would sound like. That's kind of the vibe I get. Wheels of Mercury also described this as if Black Country New Road made a black metal record, and I think that that's very fitting as well. Thank you, Wheels of Mercury, for making me aware of this record, and I hope all of you thank me for making you aware of this record, because it's fucking awesome. Check it out. End of story. Just do it. Next up, we have Engrossed in Decay from Molder, another album I've heard quite a bit about the past couple of weeks, though I'm not too sure why. I mean, I am kind of sure why. I mean, it's a death metal record, and people tend to go nuts for some gnarly death metal. You know, death metal fans are pretty easy to satisfy, but like, I don't know. For all I've heard about this thing, I definitely expected something a little bit more something. I don't know. Like, I expected maybe some crazy mellow death shit, or some crazy tech death shit, or some crazy brutal death metal shit. This is a relatively straightforward kind of death metal record. Well made, slimy, nasty. Like, I can practically feel vomit and acid being spewed from this fucking thing. It's covered in scabs. It's got plenty of mean riffs. But not to the extent of another band like maybe Worm or Tomb Mold. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. I definitely feel like it's a little overhyped in that regard. But hey, you know, all things considered, still a very well constructed piece of good old-fashioned underground American death metal brutality and carnage. If you want to listen to just some depraved and disgusting nonsense, if you love your meat and potatoes death metal, go nuts, have a ball. Next up, we have Seething Malevolence, debut studio album from Vomit Forth, and much like Engrossed in Decay from Molder, heard a lot about this record the past couple of weeks. Also, much like Engrossed in Decay from Molder, I feel like maybe this is just a wee bit overhyped. Just a little. I will say this, though. I think Vomit Forth have a lot more going for them than Molder do. Like, musically and conceptually, this is a little bit more unique, a little bit more robust, a little bit more flavorful. It can still be safely described as brutal death metal, but, you know, there's also some really big, gnarly, muscular grooves that the band is just kind of constantly pile driving on you. There are, like, some weird, staticky sound effects and soundscapes, some really crazed moments, some really depraved moments that wouldn't be out of place on a Full of Hell record, or even something more experimental from Napalm Death or Pig Destroyer. But man, the production is fucking whack, yo. I mean, the audio is constantly fucking clipping. It's like overwhelmingly, overbearingly fucking loud. I'm curious to see what Vomit Forth might do on a sophomore record, to see how they might refine everything. I will keep an eye on them. If you love brutal death metal and you're looking for something a little different, give this a shot. Next up, we have Hypervirulence Architecture from Hissing. Very, like, abysmal, dark and depraved, dissonant death metal. A lot of crazed sections and arrangements. Some blackened energies seething out of every fucking corner. It's heavy. It's dark. It's nasty. It's fucking awesome. It's a little bit more straightforward in comparison to Hissing's debut record, but it's ultimately still, like, some really dizzying shit. Like, this is all over the place, it's ravenous and chaotic, a lot of pummeling fucking beats and, like, carnivorous vocals and razor-sharp riffs. It has this almost kind of grindcore-like energy and ferocity to it. It's terrifying and technical, like a schizophrenic on a bloodthirsty rampage. There's not a weak moment to speak of. Just a really great, gnarly, brutal, underground death metal record. There's a lot of those this month, as you can tell, and this is also one of them. Definitely check this fucking thing out if somehow you're still hungry for some chaotic, puzzling tunes, even after Ashenspire and fucking, what were other records we talked about? We've talked about a lot so far. You get the idea. Check it out. It's really fucking good. Hey, hi, it's me again, Robert Walton, from the Metal Meltdown. It occurred to me, while editing this very video, that there are actually some other records that I want to talk about, so I'm going to do it real quick. First off, new album from Maul. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but it just came out. It's fucking great. Gnarly, old school death metal with modern production value. What more do you need to know? It's fucking great. Check it out. Also, Death Doom Legends Incantation put out a compilation record of like B-sides and rarities and unreleased tracks and all that shit. And it's great. Turns out that Incantation's microwave leftovers are just as good as their fucking home-cooked meals. Who'da thunk it, eh? That one in particular came out like a couple days ago, and it just showed up out of fucking nowhere, so yeah, there you go. You're welcome. And, yeah, that's officially it. It's stupid, crazy humid out here, so I'm going to go back inside. Okay, goodbye now. Yeah, I guess that's it then. Yeah. We're done here. I'm gonna go watch Stranger Things and celebrate Chompy's birthday. How's that sound, Chompy? Does that sound good to you? Yeah, sounds good? Hell yeah. What about you, Anna? How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Hell yeah, that sounds good. That's it. We're done. Get out of here. Tell me all about some great records that came out in the month of July 2022 that I didn't talk about in this video or an album review. Feel free. Who knows? Maybe there's something amazing that I truly did miss. Press this button right here for updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. Look, there's more videos here. Isn't that neat? And as always, ladies and gentlemen, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.